Welcome to Ben on Brand, where leaders discuss the strategies that drive business growth. I'm Ben Van Roy. Today's guests are Sally Davies and Leah Pacquola from MYOB. Sally runs Solo and Embedded Finance, and Leah leads strategic communications. Between them, they built one of the more interesting B2B brand stories to come out of Australia in recent years. Before we get into that story, it's worth understanding the category they're operating in. Accounting software is a category people love to hate. The admin is painful, the language is alienating, and for most small business owners, the whole experience sits somewhere between a chore and a source of low-level dread. That is not a category problem, that's a brand opportunity, because a category that people endure is a category waiting to be reinvigorated by a brand that understands them. For decades, the dynamic has been accountant-led. The software vendor earns a relationship with the professional, and the business owner gets whatever they're given. Xero disrupted that by going direct to the business owner and building something people could use. MYOB, with 34 years of history behind it, had to respond. That heritage is an asset, but it's also a weight. When your brand means accounting to a generation of small business owners, it's hard to mean something new. And then there is the AI question. Every player in this category is now claiming AI capability. Most of those claims are functionally indistinguishable. When the feature set converges, a brand becomes a variable that remains. What do people associate you with when the product is a commodity? That is the environment in which MYOB built Solo, a product designed specifically for Australia's 1.6 million sole operators. Freelancers, tradies, side gig founders, people running businesses on spreadsheets and paper receipts, and a bank account they share with their personal spending. What makes Solo worth examining is that MYOB did not solve the problem with just a features list. They went deep on the psychology of a specific customer group, named what those people were feeling, and built both the product and the communication strategy around that insight. I met Sally and Leah at Umbrella at ComsCon earlier this year. Their session in Sydney was one of the stronger B2B cases I've seen presented on a stage like that. And I wanted to bring the conversation here to Ben on Brand. Welcome, Sally and Leah, to Ben on Brand. It's great to have you both. It's been a while since we saw each other at ComsCon. Tell us a bit about that event. Was that how long have you been talking about this launch?
So, look, ComsCon does feel like it was a long time ago, but for us as myself leading the comms team and Sally looking after the product team of Solo, we've been working on this product launch for more than a year and a half by the time we'd come to ComsCon to present. So it's been a really awesome project to be part of, and it was terrific to be able to talk about some of the outcomes, because we really do believe that there was some fantastic learnings for other organisations looking to approach product and comms in a different way.
And it was really good to see a B2B brand on stage. And what kind of feedback did you get post the event?
We've got some really great feedback. I agree with you, Ben. I think, showcasing B2B as well as B2C is a real opportunity for us as the industry. And B2B do really interesting things, and we're starting to work and think about our customers in a really different way. Post ComsCon, we've had great feedback. We've been featured a number of times, yourself included, in different articles, and just lots of outreach to understand what we're doing, how we're doing it, and the learnings that we've had along the way.
Can you tell me a little bit about your role at MYOB and how long you've been there?
Yeah, so I've been at MYOB 4.5 years now. My role, so I'm General Manager of Solo and Embedded Finance. And primarily I was responsible for building the new Solo product that we've taken to market. And now I run that, and the team are working really closely with Leah and other people within the organisation. And I also run all of our embedded financial services products.
And Leah?
So I've been at MYOB about 8 years now, and it's been a fascinating business to be part of. MYOB's got a 34-year history, and through that time, you can imagine it's had to evolve and change a number of different ways. And so the function that I look after is strategic comms. So in this instance, we've been really looking at and working and engaging with the teams on product from a PR lens, so trying to think about new ways to amplify and support the product teams in bringing new ideas to market. And this has really been a fantastic project to be part of.
So before we dive into Solo, let's talk a little bit about the MYOB brand. How does MYOB's heritage work for Solo? And tell us, where does it create a bit of friction?
Yeah, so it certainly works for Solo because it gives us a level of trust and credibility, building on that 34 years of history, working with a brand that is a household known name, right? It really does help. You can't buy the goodness in that. But Solo was built for a really specific segment. It's the segment that don't employ, the under-digitized. And we were very clear from the very beginning that we weren't out to build what we already have. We're trying to build something really, really different. And if a customer outgrows what we're building, then we have a place for them to go within that MYOB portfolio. So, it really does give us a leg up from the very beginning. Where it creates friction is that sometimes a heritage brand could signal traditional accounting software. We've had a number of our customers try MYOB before, or their parents have used MYOB. We really needed to break out of what came along with that. And so, we've been very deliberate about making sure we know what Solo is and what Solo isn't. So what is Solo? It's a very simple, easy to use accounting product, mobile first. It's centered around money in, money out. You won't hear us talk a lot about accounting language. It's something that stands out from the rest of the portfolio rather than just really blends in with it. And so we've been able to really make MYOB heritage work in our favour more so than create friction, I would say.
And talking about the Solo product, if a customer using Solo needs support, do accountants have access into Solo if they need to get in there?
They do. So what we decided to do with the accounting stream is we've always really worked with that channel. They have helped us build the organisation that we are today. But we did design Solo for the business owner who wants something really simple, easy to use and confidence building. It doesn't mean they don't need accountants from time to time. Certainly at, end of year, especially at this time of year as we're coming into the end of financial year, they will leverage accountants either to do their tax or for advice. And so what we decided to do was our accounting partners still access Solo through the same way that they access their other MYOB files, the same interface, the same language. They work in the same way that they always have. And then we've kept Solo quite separate to that. It has different language and a different user interface. We weren't willing to compromise on either side of those channels. And we've been able to provide really the best of both worlds, depending on who the customer is.
The accounting software category is being heavily disrupted. All SaaS products are really being, but it's multiple directions, and it's been a space that there's a lot of established players that are trying to take market share. There's new players coming in. How is MYOB thinking about what it stands for and how it is establishing brand in the market?
It's such a fantastic question, and it's a question that every business should be asking itself at this moment in time. It's not just software being disrupted, it's every single industry across every single sector. We've had disruption at multiple stages throughout our history, including the move to cloud, which was a significant moment of disruption for us. I think what we've had to do is look at ways that we can think about something bigger than the product that we're selling itself. So what we're actually thinking of every day is not actually the software. It's about how do we support Australia and New Zealand businesses to start, survive and succeed. So that's really the through line that guides a lot of the decision making and a lot of the strategic decisions that we're making at this point in time as we face the sort of upheaval that is coming with AI. So I think that has been incredibly important to us. And the other side of that is obviously listening to customers who are experiencing this enormous amount of change, are concerned, are worried, are fearful, and are looking for confidence and support about how do I manage my business and my clients through this period of change. So having that trusted relationship with them enables us to make sure we're making good strategic decisions as we look to the future.
And it is an interesting space. Often accounting software is tied to the accountant. Are you finding that you have to market more to the end user or the business owner and the accountant? Like, is that mix changing about how you're prioritizing your marketing spend and how you're reaching out to these different groups of users?
Yeah, I think we've always dealt with that challenge. What do we talk to? Who do we talk to? And what is the priority of that? We have a really strong group of accountants and bookkeepers that work with us. They were a key part of providing insights and feedback about how Solo was going to work for their customer base. And so we will continue to leverage them. We get to them through lots of different ways, whether it be events or, standard marketing, or through our accountant and bookkeeper sales team. I think, what Solo has really done for us is opened up new channels that traditionally we wouldn't have used to talk to our end customers. Last year when we launched, we really doubled down on social as an example, more so than what we had ever done before. We had lots of influencers as part of our campaign. And what we found was, working with both sides of that marketplace and speaking to each one of them in the language they understand is really what delivers the outcomes for us as a business and also for them and understanding their needs.
And you talked about using social channels. Are there any particular platforms that perform really well for you?
Yeah, last
Like
year we ran campaigns across TikTok and Instagram with our influencer channels, and we had great success out of
on
those
both?
on both. Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. And Leah, every software brand is now claiming AI capability or infusing AI or offering AI as a part of their platform. How does MYOB use AI as a proof point?
Yeah, look, it's hard to go 20 minutes without a conversation about AI at the moment. And I think for us as a business, it isn't about trying to stand up and be a differentiator necessarily in that we have a particular type of AI, although that is valuable. It is more about saying what is genuinely useful to our
Mm.
customers to enable them to be successful. And what our customers are looking for is efficiency, is insight, is analysis. It's the capabilities that enable them to understand their business well and to perform to their best ability. So for us, it isn't about thinking about necessarily AI as a branding exercise, because I feel like it's becoming pretty ubiquitous to most organizations. But it's like, what does that mean for the people that we serve? And so for us, we've got a lot of fantastic capabilities in AI. We've got capabilities in terms of AI BAS to enable bookkeepers and accountants to complete their BAS, their quarterly BAS statements, which is an enormous impost on time, to do those way more efficiently. And that's a perfect example of how we're trying to use the technology to assist and enhance and to enable them to be more effective. So for me, I think it's not about necessarily building our own category in that space. It's about showing how we're delivering real practical results to customers.
That's one thing that really stood out to me in your presentation at ComsCon was just your real focus on the user. So rather than the traditional playbook, which is features and benefits and proof points, when did you decide to really focus on this solo group of users? And tell us about the journey.
Yeah. So, I mean, I mentioned earlier that I started at MYOB 5 years ago, so October of 2021. And coming in, my whole remit was to find a solution that works for this customer base. Our biggest competitor in this space is Excel. They
Hmm.
have customers who are running their business on Excel using pieces of paper and mixing their personal and business into one bank account. And what that really means for this customer base is they often don't claim their expenses, which means they pay more tax than they should be. They're spending a lot of time and effort trying to keep on top of things, but never really feeling like they are. And so from the very beginning, we knew we needed to take quite a different approach to what we had taken before. We could see customers looking at our existing products and knowing that it just wasn't right for them. And so we did take extensive research. There was a couple of years of research that we did to understand this audience. We spent a lot of time speaking directly with customers. And what we learned was a lot of them felt like they weren't really running a business. They were tired, they had admin overload, they felt burnt out, and importantly, really isolated. Often heard people say, okay, I'm not really running a business. This is just a thing that I do. I remember speaking to one particular lady. She was turning over about $250,000 a year. And when she said to me, I'm not really running a business, I'm like, what are you talking about? Of course you are. But she never really felt like she was. So we knew from the very beginning we had to take a different approach. And changing approach is never easy to do. Especially in a big organization. But I think when the insights that you've got are really clear and your understanding of your customer is very clear, then making that change is very easy to get an organization to get behind. Get behind it, they did. I think we were really, really privileged that from everybody working on the program right up to our executive team and our owners and our board, they really did lean into this customer base, who they are, how they feel, the fact that we needed to do something quite different. And the benefit of that was we had the runway and we were able to think really, really differently and separate out from the way we'd done things in the past, which allowed us to really take this product to market in the way that we have and the success that we've seen.
And talking about the products, you've got the solo product, and how different is it to your core platform? And how did you work with the product team to create something that was really tailored to them? Like, was it a clean slate, or was it a variation? Like, how did that product experience happen?
Yeah, we pretended like we didn't have anything, like we were a complete greenfield. So Solo program internally was set up like a startup within the wider organization. We worked 3 days a week in the office, all sat together, and I ran it like it was my business, and everybody else was also part of the business. And so what that allowed us to do was forget about how the existing products work today. We certainly understood that, and we were able to use the data that we had and the insights that we had on how existing sole operators were using that product and what was working for them and what wasn't. But when we flip the narrative to, well, who is the customer base we're going after and how do they work? Mobile first became very important to us. And we're still actually on an only on mobile product today. We
Mhm.
will add desktop at some point or browser, because there are certain jobs that our customers do that they prefer to do sitting at a desk on a big screen. But the ability to really lean into customer insight, to lean into the cultural feelings that we were getting from our customers, and to just move away from the way things had been done before and think about it as if we were building a completely new greenfields product, allowed us to come up with completely different ideas. And that's really where we landed.
And if we think about Solo as a brand, how does Solo fit into the MYOB brand architecture? And what were some of the conversations you had around the branding and how it fits?
Yeah, this was a really fun one to explore, I think. We looked through all of the different options. Is this going to be an endorser brand, which is ultimately where we landed? Is it going to work in the same way that our other products work, where it's MYOB, insert brand here? Or is it going to be a completely standalone brand? And you asked earlier, where does the MYOB brand help versus hinder? And so those conversations were certainly part of how we came up with where we landed. And the endorser brand and leveraging that 34-year history and the trust and credibility that comes with that was really important. And we did some research and spoke to customers, as we do with all of the things that we do. And one of the things that came out very clearly early on is a complete move away from the MYOB brand was not going to be a good idea. So we took the best of what we have today, and we worked with it. So, we created Solo. You'll see through how we show up as a brand, we have a different tone of voice. It's a tone of voice that speaks specifically to this market. It's very much your sidekick that's there to help you along the way. So it's a little less formal than what you'll see in our core product suite. We introduced the yellow as part of our brand color, but still leverage the purples of the core MYOB brand. So where I would say we really had the privilege of being able to take what we know works, but push it to a limit that it has never been pushed before, and have some real fun with what the brand can do and where it can move to.
How is Solo performing? Is it too early? Like if we look at, you could look at NPS or brand sentiment or any of those measures. Yeah, what insights are you seeing early about how the brand is resonating?
Yeah, so fantastic. It's performing fantastically. Our first year outperformed all of our expectations. We couldn't have hoped for a better year, I don't think. We always look lots of different metrics when we're assessing performance. So yes, we acquired more customers than we expected to. We also have retained more customers than we've expected to. We have really high engagement within the product. One of the things that we were interested to see as this product really built out over time, this customer base, they're not great at admin. It's one of the biggest challenges that they have when they're dealing with running the day-to-day business. Their focus is, out there serving their customers, getting money in the door. Were they just going to log in once a quarter, once a month and get the job done on a Friday afternoon or a whole day, a month, just sitting down, getting the books done? That wouldn't have been a success for us. And it's been really pleasing to see that we're seeing customers use it on an ongoing basis. How we've incorporated the bank account into that really works. People do like to see how much money is in their bank account, but the engagement that we've had with that part of the product is really high and driving a level of engagement that we're happy with. Our NPS scores and all the different points of measure are either on target or above target, and really they're the ones for me that are the most important. Are customers happy with the product, or are they tolerating it? From earlier reports, they're happy with it. A lot of business software, people don't jump out of bed in the morning to log into their accounting software and run their business. And so when we're getting really high NPS scores and really great feedback and App Store ratings, we couldn't be happier than that. That really means we're meeting the need and meeting that customer where they need to be met. And then when we talk about, the year of launch, we exceeded our subscription targets, PR generated significant reach, and, those early customers that we brought on for our EAP, they're still our customers today, and they're still part of our community, and they're still providing us feedback on the daily. And then one of them got my email. I still get emails from her asking for specific features, but we love that at MYOB, that they're so engaged, that they are asking us for things. So overall, really, really happy with how we've performed so far.
And what does Valentine's Day have to do with admin research? Tell us about how that came together.
What a combo, right? You naturally put together Valentine's Day and software together.
Exactly.
This is, I think, one of the great outcomes of pairing comms and product together. So, I think the opportunity to think about this product differently has created different results, and that's what we're probably the most proud of. So for us, from a comms point of view, you're always looking for the media hook, and often when you're doing the research, you're going deep into that to try and find some opportunities to drive your media campaigns. The opportunity for us, if through Valentine's Day, was that when we did the research, we understood that the impacts of running a small business were not just about the productivity. There was also issues related to isolation, loneliness. Sometimes people who run a small business, that work that they have to do spills over into their downtime, their relaxation time. It can impact relationships. as well. So what we thought we'd do is use the opportunity of Valentine's Day, which is a natural media milestone, to talk about that cultural moment and to explore actually what the experience was like for small business owners who were trying to run their business, and build a campaign around that to bring some awareness to the product. And the thing that made it land was that sort of unique combination of business software and this emotionally connective story, and that brought in our media relationships and allowed us to really drive a really strong campaign. But it also allowed us to talk about a truth that underpinned what customers of this product were experiencing, and potential customers, other small business operators who might be suffering some of the impacts. And we wanted to sort of talk to the product in light of some opportunities it could solve. So it was a fantastic campaign, got really great media connection, and has allowed us to talk to businesses in a completely different way.
And it sounds like your customers are falling in love with Solo. So it sounds like it worked.
Ben, I love that. We're taking it.
Ellie is writing that down.
So you named a mental state, which is this imposter syndrome. Like, I'm a boss, but I'm not. How do you validate something like that before you commit?
Validation really comes for us from listening to our customers. You'll hear me say that so much, especially with this group of customers, because they are so broad. You know, they are 70% of the Australian market. So whichever way you describe them, it's going to be correct. They are all sorts of different wonderful things. But when we were already hearing versions of that feeling, sole operators talk about making it up as they go, winging it, feeling like that they're just pretending to run a business. And so we took that and did some specific research across 550 sole operators. And that showed us that nearly a third of them felt like they really ratified for us that they do make it up as they go. They do feel that way. And 1 in 5 feel like they're just pretending to be a business owner. I spoke about before, that customer that's turning over a good amount of money. And just like, my husband works in business, and, I just do this. It's like, no, you're the boss. You're running this business. And, for her, that was a real moment where something switched in her mind. And I still keep in contact with her. And she often says to me, thank you so much for saying that, because my business is growing because of that mindset shift that I have made. You convinced me that I am truly running a business. I'm like, well, of course you are. There are many people out there who will be turning over 200, 250,000. That's their dream. So for me, it wasn't just about, validating a phrase I could do something with. It was, is this phrase really language that customers feel? Is it a tension that people recognize? Can I take that tension and find evidence that it affects behavior? And then when it does, how do I solve that problem? And when you solve that problem, that's where the goodness happens. That's where the love comes from, because they feel like, customers really feel like you understand them. And as they're working through different things, the simplicity, the way that we've designed service as a feature so that it helps them through the product rather than waiting till they can't figure it out and then having to ask a question. It just gives them the confidence to do what they need to do. And that confidence goes from, just in our software, which is a very small part of their day, to their overall business.
You talked a bit about Solo exceeding all of your subscription targets, and people are staying on the product and loving the product. How much do you attribute that to the Solo brand that you've built and that culture first approach versus the product itself?
They're very hard to separate, I have to say, Ben. I think for me, they're kind of one and the same thing. The way that we built Solo in this culture first approach and product quality, they really need to reinforce one another. The culture first approach helps us to find the problem in a much sharper way than what we ever had before. That allowed us to connect to the audience in a way that we never had before and talk to them in their language, in language that makes sense for them. And then the product, it has to genuinely deliver on that promise from the very first login to every interaction that we have after that. And when you think about we've heard that loneliness is a thing for these guys. So community was born out of that, the solo community and how we bring them together, even how we named the community. It's called Soulmates. It's we're there forever. So, trying to separate out the culture first approach to the CX and the product that we've built. My team would hate me trying to do that because they live it as one complete thing and one is always informing the other. And it's not just a one and done approach. We still work in this way. It wasn't about getting us to launch. It was about building something that was going to work and then become sustainable.
And I think the addition to that is if you think, and there'll be people listening who have been in a position where they've had to, from a comms point of view, had to take a product to market. And I can say having that cultural connection, tapping into that zeitgeist is an enormous leverage tool when you are trying to gain mass awareness, distribution, pick up for people to embrace it. So the absence of that culture-led connection has an enormous impact on how effective you can be in carrying that message through.
So, reflecting on all of this, what is the one thing that our listeners could take back to their own brands that they could apply based on the learnings that you've had?
So I'm not a marketer, so my advice from the outcomes of this project, and I think the learnings that Sally and I have taken away from it, is the best thing to do when looking at a problem or a product design is to actually just start to reframe it in human terms. So not even thinking about the customer per se. What is the person at the other end of this product likely to experience? What state are they in now? What is it that they want to achieve? And really get deep into that human tension. I think once you get that right, everything becomes stronger. So your product thinking gets stronger, your messaging gets stronger, your proof points resonate better, your language can be more targeted. And for me, I think while it feels like a small shift, it really changes the quality of the work incredibly quickly.
A lot of our listeners don't have big budgets. Some of them are they have an infant brand, a brand that's just finding its legs. Maybe they are themselves a solo user starting their own business as a sole trader, and they don't have the resources or the budget that an MYOB has. What's one thing that they could do to start anchoring their brand in culture and seeing some of the success that you've seen with Solo?
So I think for us, the advice would be from a comms point of view, it might just be about starting with one human tension and working back from that. So I think it doesn't need to be an oversized campaign. It is just about going a little bit deeper into the audience and trying to interrogate a little bit more around that sort of human tension. As I said, we've all got our new friend AI in the mix, which does help you to broaden out your thinking in that territory. And so I think even that small shift and an opportunity to just sort of tease out a little bit more about your audience is a great first step.
It's about listening to your customers, and if you can't hear them, go and find them, right? So, MYOB, we do have big budgets. We are able to run surveys. We are able to get research done. But in Solo, we didn't have big budgets. We ran like a startup. I at Christmas time, I was down at Inverloch walking around a market, and I stopped at every stallholder and I asked them questions about their business. I asked them questions about how they use technology. I asked them questions about the pains that they have all day, every day. And so much insight comes from that. So much so that I got one of them to record the conversation that we had together and shared it back with my team. So I think, go to your customers, find them, listen to them. The language that you need to use for your campaign will come from them. The culture that they are living in will come from them. They are really the ones that are informing you. And sometimes it's really awkward. Like I will ask people random questions in random places, and my friends are like, "Can you please stop?" I'm like, "I'm never going to stop." But that's where you learn so much more. And if you take a smart approach to that and document it, then really what you're doing is your own market research.
We can all do that, no
Yep.
matter what our role is within the brand and the company that we work in. We can all we can all pick up the phone. We've got email addresses, we've got phone numbers. As a solo entrepreneur, we can talk. We're probably talking to our customers every day. So maybe it's just including a couple of questions at the end of a conversation to talk about how can we make this better for you, or what problems are you facing?
Yeah.
Well, Sally and Leah, congratulations on Solo, and I hope more customers fall in love with it. And thank you for coming on Ben on Brand.
Thanks,
Thank
Ben.
you.
Thank you. So many great insights from Sally and Leah. Here are a few things from that conversation. The first is the brand architecture decision. MYOB had three options: fold Solo into the existing brand, go fully standalone, or somewhere in between with an endorser model. They chose the endorser model, and the reasoning was sound. 34 years of trust is not something you can just walk away from. But they were deliberate about what Solo carried from the parent brand and what it did not. Different color, different tone, different language, but the same underlying credibility. It's a lot harder balance to strike than it sounds, but they got it right. The second is the insight process. Sally walking around the Christmas markets, stopping at every stall, asking questions. That's not a research methodology you'll find in a brief. It's curiosity applied to a problem. And it's something that we can all do. The language that built the Solo brand, the naming of the imposter syndrome, the Bedman concept, and the Valentine's Day campaign, none of it came from a spreadsheet. It came from time spent with people. The third is the relationship between product and communications. The conventional model is build the product, then brief the comms team. MYOB embedded communications alongside product from the earliest stages of Solo's development. The result is a brand where the product and the story are the same thing. The takeaway for any brand at any budget: find the human problem. What is the person at the other end of your product experiencing? Once you have that, everything downstream gets sharper. If this episode gave you something to think about, please subscribe wherever you listen. And if you know a founder, marketer, or product leader who would find it useful, please share it with them. I'm Ben Van Roy. This is Ben on Brand, and I'll see you next week.